Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Ann, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What the Why. If you're new to our show, we feature conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured out this is their purpose. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck, whether that is in your job, your company, your leadership role, or even your life. All of our guests have something similar in common with you. At some point, most of them felt similarly, and more importantly, all of them found the courage to embrace change instead of letting the fear of staying the same prevent them from living into their authentic purpose. And today's guest is no exception. As soon as we started talking with the things that are going on around the world, depression and substance abuse and people seeking things outside of themselves that can only be found internally, I knew I needed to have this guest on as soon as possible. Nic Collins. You're going to remember that name, and it's Nic with no K. Nic is a public speaker, mental health professional, and author with a passion for helping others live with authenticity, confidence, and alignment. He is a certified rehabilitation counselor and Maxwell Leadership certified speaker, coach, and facilitator. In fact, just this morning, he was giving a keynote at another event, so he had come back just to do this show with us this afternoon. Nic's message blends his own lived experience, so he knows what it's like to be in these shoes, professional training and insights from 20 years in corporate America, in a storytelling, reliable and relatable format. He's creator and co-host of the Constant Quest podcast and curator of the Constant Quest Men's Gathering in the mountains of North Georgia, focusing on community connection and growth. He's the author of Advance, Discover Alignment and Authenticity by Living in Concert with Your Situation. I'm super excited to have him joining me from Georgia, where we're actually only one temperature degree different, which is pretty surprising considering I'm joining from just outside Philadelphia. So without further ado, please join me in a round of applause in welcoming Nic Collins to the show. So yay, welcome, welcome, welcome.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much, Barbara Ann, for that lovely introduction. And I've been in a lot of the places you talked about when you started off, and I resonate with that sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I've felt that for a lot of years of my life. And so I'm really excited to join you on the show and talk about my journey.
Awesome. So as part of your journey, from day one, we've asked every guest, thank you, Lisa, for that. Lisa Hiller and shout out. Um, we've After reading somebody's bio, we've always wondered, well, especially based on what you do now, I really doubt that you thought that little Nic was going to be doing what you're doing. So, what did you want to do, or who did you want to be when you were growing up?
It's a great question. I was semi-prepared that you were going to ask me that. I don't know that I have a great answer, and the reason for that is because I didn't ever really have a very clear answer to that question when I was younger. Other than Michael Jordan, that name sticks out. I wanted to be Michael Jordan when I was really young. Um, Probably even after I realized that I wasn't Michael Jordan, I still wanted to be Michael Jordan. I just looked up to him and respected the way that he approached basketball, the way that he handled publicity. All of that really spoke to me at a young age. And so I would say that he was probably my first idol or person that I looked up to. But outside of that, as far as like what I was going to be when I grew up, when it got serious, I never really came up with anything that felt like it was going to stick. Like I was really passionate about it, which is probably part of the reason that I went on the circuitous route that I did in my life because I didn't really have a passion. And even still, I'm not sure if I know what I want to be when I grow up, but I have a lot more fun doing it now, and I feel a lot more in alignment and connected with my purpose now, which is to serve people and show up in places where I used to be, but I was doing poorly there. So I like to show up and serve those people.
And let's talk about that because, from wanting to be, you know, Michael Jordan to what you're doing now, you had a successful corporate career, but it wasn't what you wanted to do. So let's talk
Mhm.
about how you went from that kid to this person that's helping other people transform their lives.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of indecision. Even when I graduated college, I didn't really know where I was going to go or what I was going to do. I ended up graduating with a degree, no offense to history and political science, but essentially just to graduate. And I found out that I could write pretty well. And so I signed up for a major that had a bunch of essay question tests. And so I got out of school and I still didn't really know what direction I was going to go. I ended up calling a friend's dad who was in manufacturing and distribution and got a job with him sweeping the floor. Ended up driving a truck, working at the counter in the warehouse, and just sort of moved my way up. That's the only company I ever worked for 18 and a half years. Um, but and it was successful by a lot of measures. I think that we have the opportunity to define success the way that we want to define success. My definition of it has changed drastically over the years. For a long time, I thought it was surrounded by money, status, the way other people thought about you, the things that you had, the amount of money in your bank account. Well, I had enough of those things, but I never felt good. I never felt fulfilled. And so I often say that the corporate world took my soul. And I've changed that a little bit. And now I say I allowed the corporate world to take
Yeah.
my soul because I have agency in it. I have power and control and decision making abilities too. And so I want to accept my part in that. But I allowed it to consume me and chase those things that didn't offer fulfillment. And it took me a long time to realize that. It was like I woke up one day and I was 30, 35 years old. And I was like, I've never really made any firm decisions about the direction of my own life. I mean, think about that. Like we should have control over the decisions we make in our own life to some degree. And I felt like I just kind of followed the path, so to speak. And I woke up and again, it treated me well. I got raises and promotions in different positions. And so it looked from the outside very, very appealing. And there were benefits to it. I'm very grateful for those opportunities. But I wasn't fulfilled. It didn't offer meaning and purpose in the way that I felt like in my soul, like I want and I need to have.
Let's talk about the pivot
Yeah.
because while you weren't feeling those things, you were looking for ways to soothe in other ways.
For sure. Yeah, I kind of leaned into what the lifestyle of being in that environment offered, which was a lot of work, but also a lot of play, a lot of entertaining, and then ultimately a lot of substance use. Probably a lot of masking of not being happy, a lot of masking of not thinking that I fit in and trying to compensate in other ways, insecurities, just not knowing who I was as a person. And so I ended up really, really depressed. I mean, I would literally come home most nights and just cry myself to sleep. I ended up seeing a therapist, thankfully, around probably in my late 20s that I thought was all because of a breakup with a girl at the time. Little did I know it was really about this deconstruction and reconstruction of the person that I am today. But I ended up leaning into substances, alcohol mainly, but others as well at times as a self-medicating measure to cope with what was missing.
And once you go down that road, even when you're working with a therapist, it's tough. And and addictions come in all forms. This just happened to be your choice. And so many people out there whether as soon as you put hyper in front of it, whether it's hyper spirituality, hyper exercise, like exercise bulimia, I mean, whatever it is, it's all that search for what fulfills you. So how did you figure out there's got to be a better way?
Yeah, you're exactly right about what you said. I mean, and a lot of times the the core issue isn't the substance use or the substance of choice. Is something else that we're trying to compensate for. So if we peel back the layers, there's usually something there from childhood or a traumatic experience or some other repeated belief, limiting belief about ourselves or insecurity or something like that. But for me, I realized, see, in college it was fine because in college everything's fine. Nobody really, it didn't ever feel like people were judging me. It was like you could just show up and do whatever. But then I didn't never really grow out of that type of behavior. Said yes to everybody all the time for everything. I wanted to show up for everybody. And I think that was insecurities. I wasn't comfortable with myself. I didn't think I would have friends if I said no, you know? And I had to compensate in all these ways. And so I'd show up and be the life of the party and drink and buy a motorcycle, boat to make sure somebody would love me back, all those kind of things. Um, and so I started to know that substance use was a challenge when I would be drinking 4, 5, 6, maybe sometimes 7 nights a week. And then it became habit. And it was just what I did. I would drink alone. I would drink at the house. I would fix a drink before I drove to dinner and I would drive with it in the cup holder and then drink at dinner. And so it just became what I did. And then it was really hard to undo that. I didn't understand, how to undo those behaviors at the time. I didn't have any tools or skills. A lot of us don't. I mean, I was coping with what I was coping with the best way that I knew how at the time. And I don't blame my former self for that anymore. I did for a while, but I don't anymore. But that happened for a long time. Like I told you, I saw a therapist. I started in my late 20s. I was seeing a therapist for almost 10 years. Um, just learning about myself, self-discovery, self-understanding, growth, coping mechanisms, tools, all of those things for my emotions, because I'm an emotional man, and that's really hard. It can be really hard. And and it wasn't until I was 37 years old when I got pulled over and spent the night in jail for DUI. And I just remember laying there in the jail cell and just knowing that there's more to it than this. I had done so much work on myself and had so much growth in ways that I knew maybe other people couldn't see, but I knew that I was on the right trajectory. But I just knew that there was more than that. I knew I wasn't living up to my potential, that there was still something left. And alcohol was that thing for me. And so the first practical idea that I remember having laying in that jail cell was maybe I should take 2 weeks off from drinking to just make sure my priorities are straight. I gave myself 2 weeks. I was like, that's fair. That's longer than I've been in probably 20 years since I
Mhm.
was 17 years old. So I made it the 2 weeks and I had a work event that weekend in Hilton Head, South Carolina at the Heritage Golf Tournament. Everybody from the East Coast of my company was coming. We were entertaining customers, big party environment and I made it. I was probably the only person there that didn't drink. And I said, okay, I can do this thing. So then I made it to my court date that was a few months later. And I didn't know what was going to happen. One of my charges was a felony. I didn't know if I was going to lose my license, lose my job. I didn't want my parents to find out, all those things. So I made it to the court date. They reduced the felony, gave me a bunch of fines, and they gave me 50 hours of community service and 6 months probation. And so I said, I can make it until I'm done with the hours. I can make it until probation. By this time, it had been 9 months, 10 months. I was like, what if I can make it 1 year? Oh my gosh, without drinking alcohol. And so I got pulled over on April 13th, 2019, Barbara Ann. And yeah, so just over 7 years since the last time I took a sip of alcohol. And that's just how behavior change can work.
Mhm. And it's really important to note that you were already on a journey, and before we booked this show, we did talk about there's so many different resources out there, and not everything works for everyone, and not every
Yeah.
program is the same. I had shared that programs in some areas that thousands and millions of people have gone through life changes, and I know other people who, um, for a variety of reasons, in different programs, whether it's been, I don't want to call anyone out specifically, but NA, AA, other Al-Anon, all kinds of programs. For some, that's not the best healing tool. For some, they end up feeling stuck, always thinking that they're on the verge of relapse, and then they self-actualize that. And but for others, that is a powerful way for them to move forward with purpose. Um, the difference seems to be when you become that thing. And so let's talk about
Mhm.
how you pivoted. There's so many different ways you could have gone with this, but you decided to go and become a certified rehabilitation counselor. What prompted you? I have friends that I've led AA meetings and NA meetings. I have friends that have gone into therapy. I have friends that have gone into people I know in therapy who are themselves still dealing with addiction issues,
Yeah.
whether it's the one that they had before they ever went into therapy and relapsed, or they found a different addiction. People I know who pivoted into sobriety and now everything is God, 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 God. And believe me, I am a firm believer in the teachings of Christ and very, very spiritual, and but they attribute absolutely everything that happens to them to God instead of their own choices, as if they are not navigating with free will, which is something that we, depending on your belief systems for all of our viewers, that you are created or made with. So, how did you choose rehabilitation counselor as your way of helping reach people?
Yeah, I knew even before I stopped drinking that I wanted to be involved in some sort of service. I didn't feel like I was scratching that itch in the corporate world. There were a lot of other benefits in the corporate world that I did get to recognize and realize, and I'm grateful for those. But I always felt like I had more to offer from a human to human perspective, a service perspective. And so, probably based on my experience in therapy, it made sense for me to pursue being a therapist and becoming a therapist. And so, um, that was in the back of my mind, but it wasn't until after I was pulled over and had not been drinking for a couple of years that I actually had the ability, the clarity, the confidence, the energy to make the leap to go back and get a master's degree at 40 years old to become a therapist. And yeah, I think in a lot of ways it was that I saw the younger versions of myself and I saw a window of opportunity to serve young Nic, and current Nic. I mean, and future Nic. I mean, that we're always evolving in some way. I'm not saying that I'm absolved of any issues at this point. We all have them forever. Um, but for me, with sobriety in general, I mean, I don't even. It's weird for me to even say that word. I don't even really look at it like that. My only job is to not drink today. And really early on for me, I went back into some of the same environments. I don't sit in bars as much as I sat in bars 10 years ago, but I'm fine going in those environments. A lot of people are not, and that's okay. If you're not, you shouldn't enter those environments if it's a trigger for you. But for me, for whatever reason, it was easy for me to keep my routine the same. Now, being sober wasn't easy, but it felt more therapeutic for me to continue to do that. And and I just say my only job is to not drink today. That's it. It felt like a lot of pressure on me to say I'm never going to drink again for the rest of my life. And it felt a little, I don't know, frustrating or something to hear the narrative that's like something's wrong with you and you're bad and you're a piece of crap. And that didn't really resonate with me either. And again, some people it does. I mean, that's cool. And so as a therapist, 90% of our job is just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. And if something sticks with somebody, then we go that route. Because if it works for you, you should do that thing. I mean, that's my opinion on pretty much anything. If it works for you, diet, exercise, whatever the thing is, if you feel like it works for you, you should do that thing and have confidence in that. This was just my route. But sobriety, substance use, all of those things, they don't define me. They're a part of my identity, a huge part of my identity. And they've informed the person that I've become in a lot of ways. But I'm
Yeah.
not bound by that.
Which is part of what's so powerful about your message, because I've been in so many different rooms and environments where people say, I am. And even my Christian energy healer, even one time when I kind of was having a bad day and I said it, and she was like, I am is very powerful. She said, you experience, you're going through. She's like, you've been, but I am. She said, that means you've embodied it. And it was interesting to hear my own words thrown back at me. And
Mm,
to your point, the therapist in you says, do whatever works. The coach in me says, do whatever works as long as you're using positive self-talk.
mm.
Because I have gone with friends to some of these programs and they make one mistake and then that's it. And then they beat themselves. No one can judge ourselves better than we can judge ourselves.
Ain't that the truth?
Unless we are literally a diagnosed sociopath, psychopath, because even sociopaths, that comes from pain. And so, unless you're a diagnosed psychopath, um, our inner critics are huge, huge. And so, how are we truly encouraging others that, okay, yeah, you messed up, but you deserve another chance?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that adder that you put on there, and I would agree. I was a pretty habitual negative self-talker. Still am guilty of it many times now. I used it as a motivator. I used it as a motivator for a lot of my life. Like, you're never going to be good enough. Get out there and run, or whatever the case is. Um, but yeah, ultimately I still didn't feel great about myself. Whatever I achieved, I still didn't feel like that was enough. And did it help me achieve some milestones in my life? Maybe so. But yeah, for long-term mental health and well-being, was it sustainable? Probably not. And so yeah, giving yourself grace and permission to just be the human that you are is such a huge thing. So I am really glad that you mentioned that, because why are we so hard on ourselves? We have one life. We have one life to live our experience in this life. And I'm one person, and I'm wired the way that I was wired. I was given the lot of whatever I was given, personality traits and things like that, and that was enough. I'm already whole. It took me 30 plus years to realize and understand this, but I'm already whole. And if I lean into those parts about me that are unique to me, that I've suppressed for my whole life, that I drank to cover up, if I lean into those things, I'm an emotional man. If I get on stage doing that keynote and I shed a tear authentically, people are drawn to that. Those are the best parts of me. Those become my best assets. I hid from those things and ran from those things my entire life, you know? And so leaning into our authentic self is huge. I mean, it changes your life. It saves you in some ways. It makes you feel free and open. And yeah, cutting ourselves some slack, man. I mean, when you go through substance use, I understand. I mean, if I were to go get hammered tonight, I would wake up tomorrow and I would feel really guilty and I would be upset and angry with myself. I would feel all of those emotions. And if a friend of mine were going through it, I would be like, yo, you didn't drink for 7 years. That's the pattern of behavior,
Yes.
right? You drank one day. I understand how it feels because you've been trying not to. So you got an F on your report card today, but you got 7 years worth of A's. Can we also talk about those? I'm not going to ignore the F. We can talk about that, but can we also talk about the A's? And so that's the way that I think about it, is like, man, you do so much work to improve your behavior, and you make meaningful, sustainable behavior change. And sometimes we stub our toe and it sucks. And all the other stuff's valid too.
And thank you so much for going there, because I was going to ask you too if you didn't. Just because we've seen it. People, they break their diet, they beat themselves up, and they stay off their diet. It didn't matter that they followed it for a month. Um, they make a bad choice. We would never treat a friend, and hopefully not a child, the way we sometimes talk to ourselves. And I think changing that inner narrative is a huge part of it. And that's a huge part of your approach, with storytelling, with your own examples. So let's talk about you and your practice and your podcast and your book, and how you are, because while this is a problem across the board, you know, social media makes light of the fact that there really is a crisis in men's health. There is. We're seeing suicides are up, loneliness is up, and it's not just because of some of the red pill incel stuff out there that's misleading them on the wrong path. There is genuine detachment from investment and making sure that we are raising happy, healthy, emotionally intelligent men in this country, and in other lots of parts of the world, but especially here in this country. And so, you know, I love that you have a men's gathering.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, you make a great point, and I will get to the men's gathering. I would love to share a little bit about it, but
Yeah.
in some ways, acceptance and awareness of mental health and men's mental health is so much better now than it used to be. It's
Yeah.
more available, it's more talked about, and in other ways at the same time, I think we're in a pressure cooker, specifically in certain industries, um, performance-based industries with social media and media at large. We play the comparison game, and we typically compare ourselves to some fictitious, perfect version of something else. And so that adds pressure. Then we feel inferior, we feel imposter syndrome, we feel inadequate. And so that puts us in that pressure cooker and adds a lot of stress. And you're right, suicide rates are up in most industries, really. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I know a lot of male dominated industries, they're certainly up. Construction, manufacturing, places like that. And I would imagine many others as well.
First responders,
First
definitely
responders.
first responders, police,
Yeah.
military. I don't have the statistics in front of me. Um, we'll have our team add some links in the comments regarding, what to do. We've done that before with other episodes, what to do if you're feeling this. This is where you can go for resources and so forth and so on.
Yeah.
Because it's very plausible that somebody's listening to and or watching this that feels similarly and
Yeah.
and has been raised to believe that as a male in his masculine, it's not okay to have the vulnerability and the emotion and ask for help, even with
Yeah.
all the advances that we have. And you're trying to change that narrative.
Yeah. And I've been there. I've been there. I decided before I was 30 years old that I was going to take my own life. And that it's a real thing from the outside looking in. I had so many things and I did, but I didn't realize that. So I've been right there, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. And so, yeah, it's important to me to support other men and to tell people in general that it's okay to show up as yourself. I mean, that's what my book is about, Advance. That's what our men's gathering is about, is really creating a space for people to feel welcome and supported, and a place where they can be open and wrong and screw up and not have it all figured out. We feel like we've got to say the perfect answer every time we talk to somebody, or we're going to get fact checked or told we're wrong. But we're still all flawed human beings having the same shared human experience. We just have to meet ourselves where we are and learn to be okay with that. We're not going to get to where we want to be until we understand this is where I am. We have to have an open and honest conversation with ourselves. This is where I am right now. We can hug each other and support each other and go challenge each other and do really hard things and push ourselves physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. We can still push real hard and have high expectations and high goals. All those things are great as long as we balance it out with grace and support and caring, loving one another, some of those things. And I think a lot of those are what get missed.
I love what you said. So much in therapy and coaching, we talk about meeting people where they are. And what you just said, meet yourself where you are, is
Mm.
really powerful. I'm going to totally steal that from you. I
Yeah,
promise. I always give credit where credit's
that's
due,
all right.
but but it really is brilliant. So let's talk about as we start to wind down your book, Advance, Discover Alignment and Authenticity by Living with concert with your situation, and you know what prompted you to write it, and where can people get it?
Yeah, people can get it anywhere that you get books. It's on Amazon in four forms: hardback, softback, ebook, audiobook. The audiobook's in my voice. So if you like my South Carolina accent, you can hear it for 6 hours if you want to. Um, but yeah, you can get it pretty much anywhere that you want. And it's in a couple local or one local bookstore where I live in Columbia, which is really cool. And I'm looking at a couple others to get it in some stores. But it's been a really fun ride. And what prompted me to write it is, well, I want to share two things real quick. I know we're coming up on time.
You're
The
okay.
okay, the living in concert with your situation. I came up with this idea when I was on a 2 month van trip across America. I left my job. I had been working full time, getting my master's degree at night full time, and I had just gotten into a new relationship with my partner Nikki all around the same time. So I was full time in three areas. And so when I left my job, I had a little bit of a break from school. Nikki and I fixed up a van and turned it into a camper van, and I drove it across America for 2 months. And she flew out and met me for a couple weeks, but I was gone in total for 8 weeks or 9 weeks. And I came up with this idea of living in concert with your situation because I played a lot of music. I brought my guitar. I listened to a lot of music, went to some shows, and I just thought about how connected to everything we feel when we're listening to our favorite band at our favorite venue. And if Nikki's with me, with our favorite person, we just feel like we're right where we're supposed to be, when we're supposed to be there, right in the right moment. And we just feel alive. And I just felt like we should be able to take that, bottle that up and take that into wherever we go, whenever we go there, that we should live with that type of energy and peace and acceptance, you know. So that was where that phrase came from, living in concert with your situation. So I wrote the book on the premise of one quote, and it was by a guy named Eckhart Tolle, or at least it prompted the writing of this book.
The book that changed my life at a very pivotal, at a very, very, very crisis moment in my
Man
life.
Search for, or not Man Search for Meaning, that's Viktor
For me,
Frankl.
it was a good, yeah, a new earth.
Yes, okay. Um, Yeah, so Eckhart Tolle, he's an existential philosopher, teacher, theorist, but he talks about this concept of the difference between our life and our life situation,
Mhm.
because we all have stuff going on out there that we're going to have to get to at some point. But do we let that rob us of what we're doing right now? The only thing I care about right now, Barbara Ann, is having this conversation with you. Yes, I have people to call back, emails to answer, dinner to prepare, boom, 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 whatever all the things are. We all do. But can we show up in the present moment? And the quote that he said that I based my book on was, forget about your life situation and pay attention to your life. Your life situation exists in time, but your life is now. Your life situation is mind stuff, but your life is real. I get chills every time I say that. But I heard that quote from him, and I just thought about the fact that so many of us show up with masks on because we feel like we're supposed to be doing something else. And I did the same thing for 20 years. Like, man, what if we just showed up as ourselves and accepted that that was enough? With courage. Courage is action in the presence of fear, not in the absence of fear. We talked about
Yes,
that when we spoke earlier.
absolutely. So we've got the book, we've got the gathering that you hold. I want to clarify also, you don't just work with men. In fact, your keynote this morning with women,
Mostly women, yeah. It was to a group of librarians. Yeah.
which is awesome because we need to hear these things too. Because we're on the other side of it going, dude, what's wrong with you? Or what's wrong with me that I'm picking the wrong dude? And so you work with people regardless of gender. Um, you also host your own podcast. Tell me about that.
We do. Yeah. My podcast partner, Taylor, and I, we host the Constant Quest podcast, and we started it over 3 years ago now, which is hard to believe we've been doing it for that long. It actually was bred out of a school assignment that I had in my master's program where we had to, as therapists, learn how to record conversations and go back and watch the tape of how we moved our hands and moved our body and positioned ourselves. And the first conversation was grab a friend, record yourself for 20 minutes. And so Taylor and I did that. I drove an hour away to Charlotte where he lives, and we ended up talking for like 2 hours. And we were like, man, we should just be doing this. I mean, we were broing out, like talking about really interesting stuff and really conversations of depth that you don't often hear men have. And so we felt like if we get so much out of this, surely other people do too. And so we started the podcast 3 years ago. We have guests from all over the place that have made a big change in their life and are pursuing their authentic dream and living in alignment in some way. And so we've had people from different countries, many states, ages, demographics of all shapes and sizes, which has been really, really rewarding and cool.
Well, we'll have to talk more offline about that because I am definitely well below my guest appearance quota, which was the only experience I ever had coming into doing this. This
All
was one of
right.
my big pivots. So, parting advice for those who are watching and or listening this, we know that our audience tends to be people who are looking for inspiration to move forward when the fear of change is still stronger than the fear of remaining the same.
Mm,
And and you did that and more, and have helped
yeah.
so many other people, and will continue to help so many other people do that. So, what suggestions or advice um, do you encourage? Would you offer to encourage those who are in that stuck place?
Ooh. Number one, I would say you're not behind. You're right where you need to be. It's all right where you are. Meet yourself there, and you can make it. The other thing I want to say that's interesting, I talk about in counseling sometimes, is the difference between a rut and a groove. So I'll just share myself. I've been in some ruts before. Maybe some other of you have been as well. So what a rut is a repeated, reinforced, undesirable behavior. And then we get ourselves in this rut and we feel like we can't get out. The good thing is, the exciting thing with neuroplasticity is we can completely change our behavior and it can change our life. And so a groove is the same thing, but it's just a desirable behavior that's repeated and reinforced over time. And these two things can coexist. You can still be in a rut and trying to be coming out of it and create new behaviors that you repeat and reinforce over time. So I drank almost every day for 20 years. I was in a really, really deep rut. Now I haven't taken a sip of alcohol in over 7 years. I'm in a groove right now. And so that's possible. It can change your life. So real, meaningful, sustainable behavior change is possible. And it can change your whole life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. For those who are watching, Nick's information is going to be available in the comment section on whatever platform you are watching this on. Again, welcome to our new viewers as we continue to add platforms around the world. Now, the easiest way, especially for those who may be listening, what's the best way to connect with you?
I probably spend the most time on Instagram. I'm trying to do LinkedIn a little bit more. I kind of shunned LinkedIn for a little while when I left the professional or the corporate world. But LinkedIn Instagram is probably the easiest. And you're going to put this in the show notes, I believe.
Yes, but you can
But
still let us
okay,
know what your head, what
Nick
your,
with Nick with no K, Nick underscore Collins underscore authentic. And
yeah.
if you type that in on pretty much any platform, you can find me: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, um, LinkedIn, website, nickcollinsauthentic.com.
Awesome. And yes, we will have your Instagram, your LinkedIn, and your TikTok all added below in the comment section, or I guess it's whatever my magical team does. They're going to make sure that that information will be accessible to all of our listeners and viewers. So thank you so much for fitting this in today. I think this is going to be a really powerful conversation that hopefully people will share with others who need it. And I look forward to potentially having you back to talk more about some of the successes that you've had as you continue to reach out to more and more people at a time when they really need to hear messages such as the ones that you are sharing and the services that you offer. Because you, we need more therapists who resemble people who are seeking therapy.
Come on.
So again, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Yeah.
And to those of you who are watching or listening, wherever you're accessing this show, thank you. Also, you have so many listening and viewing choices available to you across multiple platforms in multiple countries. And so we really appreciate the fact that you're taking time to join us, and especially with conversations like this. Not that all of our shows aren't powerful, because they are. There are so many people that need to hear this information. So if you could please do us a favor and share it with anyone that you think could benefit from learning about the resources that Nick has to offer, and the fact that there's just a better way forward and that he's living proof that you can do it. And for whatever you're going through, Whatever changes you're looking to make in your life or your career or your company, no matter how big or small, join us again for more illuminating and informational and inspirational conversations with guests such as Nic, who found a way to overcome whatever obstacles lay in his path, to find his purpose and to live it.
Mm.